It's exactly 1 month and 7 days to the end of the 8th Assembly as we know it. But how well did the Senate and House of Representatives fare in their mandate of lawmaking and representation? And as endorsements roll in for the APC's preferred candidates for the 9th Assembly leadership, a group is asking the courts to upturn the APC's zoning arrangement, which it says excludes the Southeast. Hello everyone and welcome to Politics Today live on Channels Television, your home for the news. I am Kayode Okikiolu here in Lagos, Nigeria. Well, let's get started tonight, and our first port of call is the 8th Assembly, which will no doubt go down as one of the most intriguing legislative bodies in the country. The controversies began with the emergence of its leaders in 2015, which appeared to go against the ruling All Progressives Congress's plans. Now, this is believed to have led to a frosty relationship between the 8th Assembly and the executive arm of the government. Now, there were also some unusual incidents, like the infamous mace snatching episode, for example, which incidentally happened just a little over a year ago. You might definitely recall that moment that you have there on your screen. Well, there you see that scuffle, that infamous scuffle, especially as people were wondering what exactly happened. How do we, piece this together? There you have the snatching right there. Infamous all the way. But then it's a year after, and still allegations of budget padding also was a major issue, and there were calls for a reduction in the pay package of lawmakers. This also came up from time to time. But as it turns out right now, the 8th Assembly appears to have outperformed previous assemblies, especially in the number of bills passed. At the least, at this point, reports say over 300 bills were passed by the 8th Assembly. But then the question is, passing a bill is one thing. Getting it signed into law by the president is another, and this has proven to be a major challenge for the National Assembly. Tonight on the program, we take a deeper look at the bills and how their passing or otherwise affects governance for you and I. But first, let's bring you some other political stories making the rounds in the country. Of course, those are the bills. We'll bring you them shortly, but let's bring you our political roundup.
In what turned into an emotional debate, lawmakers in the House of Representatives have condemned the worsening security situation in the country and have invited President Muhammadu Buhari to appear before the House on the matter. The debate followed a motion by Representative Ahmed Safana of Katsina State on the urgent need for the federal government's intervention on the ongoing wanton killings of innocent people, destruction of property, armed robbery and kidnapping by heavily armed bandits in Katsina State. Some of the lawmakers who spoke described Nigeria as a failed state and condemned the lack of response on the part of the executive and the security agencies. The former governor of Sokoto State, Malama Tahiru Bafarawa, has called on the federal government to change its strategy in addressing the nation's numerous security challenges. The former governor, who was speaking at a news conference in Abuja, describes the state of insecurity in the country as worrisome, adding that it has affected the nation's economy. The Kayode Fayemi administration in Ekiti State believes the season of politics should be fizzling out and proper governance take the center stage. For the best of governance to be experienced, the government has organized a leadership retreat for political appointees and the civil service leadership to groom them for the tasks ahead.
You're welcome back to the program. Just before we went on that break, we were talking about the bills in the National Assembly. You might ask that, what is the importance of a bill to you and I? It is a big deal. Now, over the course of the 8th Assembly, there's been a back and forth sort of between the executive and the legislative arm of the government, especially as it concerns bills. Bills, yes, it is a big deal. Now let's show you some of the bills, major bills that were rejected by the president. First on that list is the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill, the PIGB. Now this particular bill is notorious, if I may use that term, especially because it was introduced into the National Assembly over 10 years ago. I'm talking 2008. We're in 2019 now, and the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill is still a major issue of contention. It's been a lot of back and forth, not just for the 8th Assembly, for the 7th Assembly, and even the 6th Assembly. Next to that is the Federal Audit Commission Bill, which has also been some major issue, especially when it comes to assenting the bill at the executive level. You have the 2019 Appropriation Bill, which was just passed by the National Assembly. We're still expecting it to be signed into law. So that doesn't exactly qualify as a rejection. And there's a police reform bill, which a lot of people are clamoring, saying we need to reform the Nigeria police force. And there you have it, the National Institute for Hospitality and Tourism Bill, the National Research and Innovation Council Bill, and it goes on and on. So let's get into the discussion tonight. Oh, well, there's more. There's a Stamp Duties Act. There's a National Agricultural Seed Council Bill, Agricultural Credit Guarantee Scheme Fund, the Independent National Electoral Commission Act 2010 Amendment Bill. Of course, that has to do with the electoral process in the country, especially as we count down to election in Kogi State, for example. A lot of people are saying this might be a time to pilot this Electoral Amendment Act. So let's get into the discussion tonight as we weigh in on the politics of lawmaking in the National Assembly. Let's speak to our guests. They are both legal practitioners, but they represent different sides of the divide, talking about the ruling APC and the opposition PDP. Mr. Ilemona Onoja is a lawyer and member of the opposition PDP. And next to him is Mr. Sunusi Musa, also a lawyer from the ruling APC. They both join us from our Abuja studio. It's a pleasure to have you gentlemen tonight.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
All right, so let's get into it. I'd like us to start from the basics. How important is a bill? I mean, I hear the term bills a lot, and I'm sure a lot of Nigerians hear that term a lot. So, Mr. Onoja, how important is the term bill to an everyday Nigerian, for example?
They fundamentally form the lifeblood of a democratic governance. Bills are the structure, the flesh, if you will, via which the judiciary can interpret what constitutes our rights, freedoms, liabilities, obligations under a functional democratic process. And they also form the instruction, the power, if you will, for the executive to act in pursuing peace, order, and good governance. It is a combination of all these three, the lawmaking, the interpretation thereof, and the execution thereof. The combination of all these three is what forms government. So in terms of construction, bills at the introduction, that is where the whole governance process starts, because that is what helps us define what the limits of our rights, the limits of our obligations, the limits of our responsibilities, and all that under a proper democratic governing structure. It is very important to know what's going on.
Okay, I think that's a good. I think that's a good introduction, Mr. Onoja. At least we understand better what a bill is. Now, this is for Mr. Musa. Now, you've seen the list of bills that are pending for the 8th Assembly, and people say it is a lot. What do you think that says about the performance of the 8th Assembly?
I think the performance of the 8th Assembly should be for me as a person and for ordinary Nigerians has been below expectation. In the sense that we have had a leadership of the National Assembly that is determined to frustrate any effort for the executive arm of government in giving good leadership to the country, in providing good governance and security of the country. So that has really affected the lawmaking business of the legislature on how it affects the society at large. But because the leadership of the National Assembly has from the beginning, it has made up itself in such a way that particularly the President of the Senate and the Speaker, that they are not ready to provide that cooperative system of providing good governance to the country. But be that as to me, of course they have passed some bills, but the passage of a bill on its own does not mean that the president must sign those bills. Because
we'll get to that in a moment. Mr. Musa, if I may, we'll get to that in a moment. But you have talked about the leadership of the 8th Assembly, and I'd like to take Mr. Onoja's response to this. For the large part of the 8th Assembly, Mr. Onoja, the leadership of the Assembly was a part of the ruling APC. Does it not baffle you, Mr. Onoja, that we still had that sort of frosty relationship, even though the leadership of the executive and the legislature were from both parties, for the most of it anyway?
It is baffling that, indeed, that an assessment will be made, and the conclusion of that assessment will be that the 8th Assembly stood and tried to prevent the executive from functioning, and that the 8th Assembly constituted itself as an obstacle to prevent the achievement of the organizational goals of the APC-led federal government. When the leadership of the 8th Assembly resumed in 2015, I think it was on the 9th of June 2015, the first formal meeting between the executive and the leadership of the legislature probably didn't hold until about September, October, if I remember correctly. Now, at all times, the 8th Assembly has presented itself as willing to work and willing to function, as a proper arm of government. The thing is, it has constantly been undermined. It has constantly been intimidated. At one point, was physically invaded by people from the executive arm of government. In sheer terms, in sheer performance terms, it's impossible to reach a conclusion that the 8th Assembly was an obstacle in any way. The executive has only submitted 11 bills to the 8th Assembly. Of these 11 bills, that is apart from the routine appropriations act and bills and budget proposals. Apart from these, 2 of those bills have been passed. That is the Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Bill and the National Minimum Wage Bill. Out of these, the remaining 8, a number of them were withdrawn. One was rejected because it infringed on the rights of states to develop their water resources. And the other, the National Money Laundering Prevention and Prohibition Amendment Bill, was withdrawn in the course of the disagreement between the executive and the legislature. I'm sorry, between the Attorney General of the Federation and the head of the EFCC. Now, I'm saying all that to say this. If you have 4 years, over a 4-year period, the executive has only submitted 11 executive bills to the legislature, how do you say that the legislature was an obstacle?
Okay, let's allow Mr. Musa weigh in. Mr. Onoja, let's allow Mr. Musa weigh in briefly on some of the allegations you have put forward. Now, Mr. Musa, you've listened to him. He said there was some form of invasion. He's also said the executive did not present a lot of bills, so it's not exactly the legislature's fault. How do you respond to that?
I think he's by what he said, he vindicated my position, because if out of 11 bills, the National Assembly was able only to pass 2 out of them, 2 where one was rejected and 1 was withdrawn. What of the rest? So you can see that it is below performance, and that is actually what we are saying. The leadership of the National Assembly has consistently shown itself to be antagonistic to anything that would develop this country. In helping this administration to bring change, it has promised Nigerian people when it came in 2015. For me, and we have to get this straight, the issue of presenting more bills to the National Assembly should not be our focus, because of what use it is that when even the one that you send 9 bills that have not been passed, when you send more, what will happen to them?
Right.
Because they only keep them. It shows that the leadership of the National Assembly is more concerned about doing things that to derail the development of this country.
Now, Mr. Musa, I would allow you land on that idea in a moment, but we have to take a break at this point, Mr. Musa. I apologize. I would allow you land right after this break. Now, there's still the leadership tussle for the 9th Assembly on our lineup. Don't forget that the APC is looking to avoid mistakes that were made 4 years ago, and the PDP is positioning itself to be a major power broker. We'll talk about that in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to the program, everyone. We're still taking a look at the 8th Assembly as we count down to the beginning of the 9th Assembly. Let's get back to the conversation. I will still have from Abuja, Mr. Ilemona Onoja, a lawyer and member of the opposition People's Democratic Party. And right next to him is Mr. Sanusi Musa, also a lawyer from the ruling APC. I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, for staying with us. Now, Mr. Musa, you were going to land, but I'd like for you to add, a lot of people are asking that to what extent should the party be involved, for example, in the leadership tussle of the National Assembly and other issues of the National Assembly? So I'd like you to combine that as you land on your previous point.
Okay. Like I said, let me go. Honestly, it escaped my mind because we are having some discussion, but let me talk the issue of the leadership of the National Assembly, which is very important. I think it is a misunderstanding of democratic system, the constitutional democratic system we have in place, to think that the leadership of the party or the party that has majority cannot have a say on who will lead the National Assembly. It is simple. What are the qualifications for you to be a member of the National Assembly? One of them is for you to be a member of a political party. And all of us that went out to vote on the voting day, we did not see we did not vote for the name of any candidate. We voted for a party. So, and it is the voice of the Nigerian people that has given the APC majority in the National Assembly. And it is due upon the APC to make sure that we have a leadership that will be cooperative to the executive, because it is through the executive that we will be able to translate those campaign promises into reality to the Nigerian people. That we can only do optimally if we have a National Assembly leadership that is cooperative and understanding of the executive, without compromising the independence of the legislature.
Okay, now earlier today, Mr. Musa, earlier today, reports emerged that a member of the APC and a particular group, Kingdom Human Rights Foundation International, described the party's zoning arrangement as excluding the Southeast. In fact, they're headed to court to actually dissolve this particular arrangement. Now, I'd like to ask Mr. Onoja, you have seen the proceedings in the APC. You have seen, I mean, the things emanating from the leadership tussle from the APC. How do you describe this, especially because 4 years ago, we had something like this also?
My simple position is that the APC has failed, refused, and neglected to learn from its past. In the words of Dr. Bukola Saraki, the President of the Senate, the PDP has learned more from its defeat in 2015 than the APC has learned from its victory. I'm saying that to say this. While, yes, we understand that you can have an abiding ideology and on the ground of the ideology, the moment that these people step into the National Assembly, they're senators and House of Reps members of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and no more mere political party members. At this point, the best the APC can do is lobby, is walk around and try to talk to people and convince them of the need to flow in a certain direction. What we have instead is the determination of the leadership of the party in a corner that this is who should lead the party, and is trying to force it down everybody else's throat. I would expect at this point, and it's an expectation placed on people who are no longer mere members of a political party, but are senators and House of Reps members of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to do what they consider to first and foremost be in the overall interest of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
So what's your view, Mr. Onoja, what's your view on zoning and consensus vis-a-vis competent? I think that's something that has come out a lot, briefly.
The truth about it is there are competent people everywhere. And competent people cannot only come from one part of the country. There are competent people from the northwest, east, or south. You know, so if we're saying, and if we recognize federal character, which is enshrined in our constitution, then why not? Look for competent people from the southeast or from wherever zone of the country that is not carried along. There are competent people everywhere. Now, particularly if you take into consideration that the people in the southeast, yes, they may not have been that many, but the people in the southeast have voted for you, and they're Nigerians, and they're competent people in that number. If you cannot take, if you come to a place where you're saying, in spite of the provisions of federal character in our constitution, that you believe that competent people can only be found in one part of the country, then we really have a problem.
Right. Now, Mr. Musa, I'd like you to respond. Also, in that suit that was filed, it was said that apart from the Southeast, according to those that filed this particular suit, apart from saying that the party seems to be excluding the Southeast, they also gave a list of the major appointments and positions in the country and tried to say, okay, this has gone to the Northeast, this has gone to the Southwest. So it's only fair that the Southeast at least gets something. So what is your view on zoning, according to what your party says?
You see, let me say this. I believe in zoning, and because my party believe in zoning. But then, this is democracy. The people of the Southeast willingly rejected APC in the recently concluded election. Willingly, APC fielded candidates in all the seats of the National Assembly in the Southeast. APC fielded candidate in the state houses of assembly, APC fielded candidate for the governorship, but the people of the South rejected, refused to vote for APC candidate. Then what do you want APC to do? That to go and beg PDP member to come just because they want to give a Southeast person a position in the Senate? No, certainly no. We should not misunderstand the provision of the federal character. That has to do with the issue of forming the government, and the Constitution is clear. It has mandated the president to at least have one minister from each state of the federation, which as at now we have. So, but this is issue that has to do with the election, unfortunately, which is something that is paining us.
Right.
The people of the South is decided to play politics that exclude themselves from the mainstream of the politics. There is nothing we can do.
Okay.
But we hope by 2023, they will realize that coming to the mainstream APC will give them better chance to play the national politics, not the way they are now.
Now, Mr. Musa, I'd like Mr. Onoja to give his final words before we round up on the show tonight. I'd like Mr. Onoja, if you can just briefly.
85,058 people voted for the APC in Abia State. In Anambra, there were 33,000. In Ebonyi, there were 90,000. I can go on. In Imo, 140,000. For anybody to say that the Southeast rejected the APC, it's not true, because those are people who went out and voted.
Okay.
Now, if you're saying that this is a situation where those people should be completely disregarded, in spite of the fact that in overwhelmingly pro-PDP areas they went out and voted, what kind of message are you sending to them towards another election?
Mr. Onoja, I think that's a great place
on the one hand.
I think that's a great place to let it lie. Mr. Onoja, because of our time, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us on the program. Mr. Ilemona Onoja is a lawyer and a member of the People's Democratic Party, and right next to him is Mr. Sanusi Musa, also a lawyer from the ruling All Progressives Congress. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us tonight. Well, that's our show tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I am Kayode Okikiolu. Have a beautiful night.